Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's episode of Shape Unplugged. My special guest today is Emily Zien, high school PE teacher for the American School of Milan in Italy, which is really cool because we get to hear a little bit about an experience that is happening somewhere else in the world right now, which I think is fantastic. So, hi, Emily, and thank you so much for being here.
Hi, thank you for having me. This is such a highlight and such a treat. So thanks.
Awesome. So I always like to start things off by asking our guests, how are you right now? And what does teaching look like for you these days?
Yeah. In all honesty, it's been a really rough couple of weeks for me here. So I'm new to Milan. I've been here since September and started second semester with a whole new set of students. And just about a day and a half before, we were told that we would have 75% of the students in school, and they'd been online before that. So a lot of flexibility, a lot of checking my expectations and reminding myself every day, all day long, do the best you can with what you have. Don't do things that are extra, or don't do things that aren't entirely worth the time and energy that you're using to do them. Yeah.
I think that's such authentic, awesome advice for everybody listening right now. I think that's something everybody needs to hear and remember. So I really appreciate you sharing that with everybody.
Yeah, for sure.
So Emily, I know right now you're teaching PE full-time, but you've also taught health education. And through that experience, you were fantastic enough to author a blog for us recently on teaching health education, especially right now with the challenges that this era presents. So in thinking a lot about health education and the kinds of meaningful conversations they often facilitate with students, that our health educators need to facilitate with their students, have you picked up any good advice or resources for how to facilitate such conversations in a virtual environment?
Yeah, I think that one of the things that I think about is just consistency, making sure that the students can consistently hear me talk about how important how they are is right now. Whether it's they're feeling like they've had a really great day or they've had a really, upsetting day, just constantly reminding them that no matter where you are on that emotional spectrum, that's okay. I think one of the things that has been really hard for me is remembering to just say the students' names all the time, because in a physical classroom, that's how we build trust. And so finding ways when we're online to greet the students when they first come in by saying their name, or purposefully, call them out by name in some way, shape, or form, as often as you can, it took me a while to be able to figure out how to make that happen on Zoom. Yeah, and I think, again, as much messages as you can give to the students about, what are they doing to take care of themselves, and what are they doing to get outside if they can, or just take their well-being and put it sort of at the center of their thinking through their day as well.
I really like that. And I think it's so simple, but so true what you said. And so what a good thing to remember, just to start off with every class, thinking about that and being mindful about that connection. So thank you.
Yeah. The other thing that I want to say about that, and it's not necessarily about the conversations that I have with them, but just remembering that the students have a lot going on. The concept of cognitive overload, I might see them for one lesson and I might be teaching my same lesson throughout the day, but they're doing that however many times. For my students, it's 8, they have 8 different classes. So I think about not only am I trying to cut out anything that I can that's extra, but how can I do that for them as well? How can I reduce the number of clicks they have to take to access something, or how many documents they have to keep track of for classwork? So really simplifying what I ask them to do as well.
Thank you. That's so powerful. And so along those lines, a lot of the success involved in making those conversations work is based on that strong level of trust, right, between the student and the teacher. And you've touched on a few things to help get there, to help lay that foundation. But do you have other thoughts on how best to stay connected with students right now to ensure that that trust is there?
Yeah. I think one of the examples that comes to mind to me is, we've all heard so much like this is the new normal, or we've never had a school year like this. But our students are still developing. For me as teenagers, for other people as young kids. And I was having the students journal, and I was writing back to them as often as I could. It's very time consuming, but I was able to connect with them really personally. And I had a student say that she felt really guilty because she didn't want to hang out with her family all weekend. And I wrote back to her being like, you shouldn't want to, like, it's normal for you as a ninth grader to not want to spend time with your family, because developmentally that's where you are. And the pandemic is putting you in this sort of unnatural situation. So trying to connect the students, I always love, talking to students about what's happening in their brain as they develop or how they're learning. So figuring out a way to remind them that you are teenagers and you're supposed to want to take risks or, learn to make your own decisions. And how can we help them still do that, or at least remind them that that's what their brain and their body is trying to do right now, even though we're in this new normal.
I think that's such a good point. And it's so funny that you say that. As a parent, I'm having that moment of, yes, this is something we all need to remember. As much as I think as a parent, I'm so aware of trying to make sure that they're okay. And in my mind, that might mean family time. We should be together so I can make sure they're okay. But as a parent, and also for our teachers to be thoughtful about reassuring them that these, just as you said, these feelings are okay. I think that's so powerful and so important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So there's a lot that we can acknowledge is very challenging and very difficult right now, hands down. That's pretty obvious. But I also always like to ask educators if they see any positive aspects of this moment, either specifically in health education or just in general in the world of education. And as a teacher, where are you seeing that?
There's a lot going on in the world with health equity, with access to health, with social justice, and acknowledging racism as a proponent of health, especially when we're talking about public health. But those are really big topics. And again, when we're thinking about like smaller scale things that are going on that we can actually manage right now, for some people, that's not it. But I think that where I see one of the coolest connections is that there's a bigger understanding of the word asymptomatic. And there's a bigger understanding of masks reduce transmission. And that to me lends itself perfectly to STIs and sexual health. And I had the honor of going in. So our middle school has been present almost the entire school year. And I went in and helped one of my colleagues teach an STI lesson earlier this year. And to be able to draw the comparison between condoms and masks was like, they got it, and in the years past, like I had to teach the vocabulary word of asymptomatic to middle school students, and they already know what that means. So I do think that there's some pretty significant connections between understanding contagious things and then applying that to sexual health.
That is so cool. I've never heard that connection drawn before, and I think it's brilliant and fantastic. And I love that. So thank you for sharing that. Mm-hmm. That's a great example. And here's another question I always like to ask teachers to share out, and I'll ask it in two parts because I think there's different ways to approach this. And here's the question is, if there were a perfect resource to help you be a better teacher right now, what would it be? And here's the second part to that. If your brain is like, no, I can't fathom what that would be, what is your perfect resource that you do use right now? So you could approach it from either way. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to answer them in reverse. I am tried and true Google educator. It helps me stay organized. It helps me, do all of my planning and everything. So that's like my bedrock. But when it comes to a resource that if I could snap my fingers and it would magically appear, I think I mean, one of the big challenges of teaching online for me is that the students don't all have the same technology that they're using. So when a student has an issue with not being able to upload an assignment or not being able to connect, or their camera won't turn on, or whatever it is, like, I wish that every student had the same piece of tech that they were using so that I could know what to do from a distance to support them. And I think you could take that further as far as I teach at a school where everyone has a device. And I know that there's a lot of teachers who are dealing with not having access to the technology for their students. It'd be great if that was just universally available to every kid.
I completely agree. And I think that's a great observation and a great one to call out. And also, yes, I love that you pointed out the importance of the organization piece for a teacher. I think that it really helps prevent burnout in a lot of ways when you can tap into a resource like that and keep yourself organized. So great share out. Thank you, Emily. Mm-hmm. And then on that note, any last thoughts for everybody listening today about teaching health education at this time?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's so many people that are dealing with different situations and different scenarios. So the best thing that I can think of is just to remember that you're doing the best with what you have. And that even when you have the days where you're feeling all of the down emotions, that's okay. Those emotions are there for a reason. And it's not going to be an easy year. And what you're doing is so important.
I love that. Thank you so much, Emily. And I will add to that I hope our teachers are listening to this and remembering that and taking it to heart now. And I hope they continue to take it to heart, because as I am constantly reminded of, and it's just true, we have a long road ahead of us, right? So we're in this challenging moment now, but as our kids eventually do return back to in-person school, the trauma that's been experienced, the different levels of learning that took place or didn't take place, the huge adjustment to being back in a setting with other children is going to be a massive adjustment for everybody. And so to give ourselves grace and just as you said, let each day be its day where we show up and give what we can give and do our best and then keep going, I think is so powerful. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, you're welcome. I have to remind myself of that every day too.
Right? It's good to remind each other and ourselves. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Emily, thank you so much for being our guest today on Shape Unplugged. I so appreciate your time, and especially that you were willing to dial in from Milan, Italy, and make this time zone difference work. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
All right. And to everybody listening, thank you for your time and joining us today. And I hope that you tune in for future episodes as well.